It was the pain. It was the pain.
Okay, that's through pain, there is beauty.
Yeah, it is. I mean, welcome to the ReeThink podcast. Today we have another episode with a new guest, and welcome with me, Pavel, who is the co-founder of FineMind. Pavel, introduce yourself.
Rudi, thank you so much for having me. You hit the nail on the head. I think my full-time job, and then some, maybe I'll start with fatherhood. And then in the free time that I have the privilege of running an incredible organization in Uganda that puts mental health first. And we'll go into so much more detail about that, but I can't wait to talk more.
Yeah, I mean, already Uganda, mental health, fatherhood, there is so much to uncover. So where we should start? I think mental health maybe. So what is FineMind and why Uganda? And why mental health? 3 questions in one.
You got it. I'll do my best to see if I can synthesize those. And those are often the 2 questions I get. Why mental health? I have lived with obsessive compulsive disorder, OCD, since I was a little boy. My first memory of it was when I was about 13 years old. And I remember washing my hands, and I couldn't stop. And I would wash my hands 40, 45 minutes at a time until they would start to crack and bleed.
Wow.
And I was in search of this just right, perfect feeling of them being completely clean. And I think OCD kind of came about in the midst of my parents' divorce. The house was turbulent. There was a lot of yelling, ill will, bickering, and I feared that, goodness, if I was to say something to my mom and my dad, what if that would spark yet another argument? So I think my brain cleverly tried to create kind of my own makeshift world where I was in control. And for folks who are familiar with OCD, that's an illusion. You're not in control. So my own journey with OCD has been quite arduous and long. And I've been very privileged and fortunate. I've grown up here in the United States, and I've had incredible supports and services, therapy. I've had an OCD coach, and yet it has still been very, very difficult. So when I look at a place like Uganda, or many, frankly, low-income countries, they have a fraction of the supports and services that we do here in the United States. Now, for instance, in Uganda, a country that's known as the Pearl of Africa, stunning flora and fauna, and yet they have 50 psychiatrists for the whole country of about 50 million people.
Wow.
So if you do the quick math there, that's a psychiatrist per million people, and that's just not going to get the job done. They say that about 35% of the population lives with a mental disorder or mental health condition. I actually think that's vastly underestimated because just so many folks don't even know what depression is. Rudi, kind of cut to the chase here. I felt truly called. If my journey has been so difficult, how are folks in other places that have no mental health infrastructure or supports, how are they contending and dealing with it? And that was kind of the impetus or the catalyst to me doing work in mental health. That's the mental health part. Let me quickly tell you about why Uganda. I think that was actually quite serendipitous and random. I was younger, still young. We're always going to be young, but at that point, I think like many of us maybe who want to get into the social impact space, we want to do good. Let's see if we can change the world. And I think that was motivated by a bit of a kind of a selfish, maybe white savior, colonial mindset of Africa needs me. I got to travel to Uganda randomly because my friends ran a small nonprofit organization there. So I tagged along for about 12 days the first time. I did not end up changing the face of Africa or Uganda. But what happened is I changed, and I made a promise to myself that I would go back. So I've been to Uganda now 11 times. It's my second home. I adore it. I love it. I have a pretty tenacious, compelling relationship with it. So Uganda, mental health, kind of the intersection of both has brought me to my kind of life's path.
Wow. So much to unpack. In particular, I want to dive deeper later into the culture of Uganda and what you said about like that you had this like that's almost egoish, let's say, motivation at the beginning. And I have also some interesting facts about sub-Sahara Africa. And when it comes to mental health, I want to dig into that. But before we touch on that, I'm super curious about your OCD because I remember one of my favorite movies is The Aviator. Have you seen that one?
I have not, but I know who you're talking about. Leo DiCaprio, obviously incredible.
Yeah, but it's the person that he's betraying because it's a biopic about Howard Hughes, who was this like amazing guy that basically started a couple of industries. So basically, he was like the heir of a tooling company, and he started like Hollywood movies in particular, and then out of coincidence, like betraying a movie from World War Two, no, World War One was it, and where planes are flying around, he started like trying to let's say play around with aviation with planes because they actually filmed actual real planes, and so he got into aviation. And at some point he was like, I think, richest person in the world, and having like on the one hand like amazing films that he did, and also his aviation company. However, where it gets interesting is on the one hand, he was like obviously a genius, but he had also OCD. And funny enough, it was also the compulsion with trying to wash his hands and until he bleeded. So this is the story that just came up when you told me that story. So I'm just wondering how you could like get this into control, because I remember in his life story it went too far, and the more stress he had, the more he went into this dark place, and at the end he was like isolating himself. So I just can imagine that this is a huge burden to carry, and I'm wondering how you do it right now and whether some symptoms went away. Curious about that.
Let me see if I can unpack it. OCD is one of the more debilitating conditions globally. I think it's in the top 10 alongside with cancer. I mean, all the heart disease, if you name it. OCD is comprised of two main things, two main building blocks. You have obsessions, things that
Yeah.
are kind of writhing in your head, ruminations and thoughts. And those obsessions often lead us to engage in behaviors, which are called
Yes.
typically compulsions. And those compulsions you kind of create to
Yes.
alleviate or relieve yourself from this writhing, ruminating thoughts. Often the case when some folks begin with OCD, it's kind of cleanliness, OCD, germ OCD, or you have individuals that are checking doorknobs, light switches, garage door openers. And I started there too, Rudi. I mean, thankfully, those have actually kind of since gone, but the maybe the evil of OCD is that it finds
Yeah.
other places in your life to kind of latch
I
onto.
get it.
So one of the things right now that's something that's been really contentious is what they call relationship OCD. And I've had
Tell
this for
me.
several years.
Sounds too intriguing. I'm sorry.
So OCD loves to kind of sink its teeth into what's most meaningful and most important to you. And relationships are a good place to start. So my partner, my wife, that's been a place of tension. And a byproduct of OCD, she's been a bit of a punching bag. At least how it manifests for me, Rudi, is that I often think I'm engaging in behavior or actions that are deceitful or dishonest, or I've crossed the line in certain places. Maybe I find another person, another woman attractive, and by that feeling alone, I feel like I have cheated on her. And what that compels me to do is that I have to then confess. I have to confess this wrongdoing because I feel like in the name of honesty, I'm doing the right thing. But my mind makes up these kind of heinous things that I've engaged in. And I think the work that I've done, Rudi, is that we all are attracted. We're all humans. That's a very
Yeah.
common feeling. But in my mind, it's not. I feel like I've crossed the line. So the way that I've kind of tried to tend to this is attending therapy, but kind of the gold standard is something called exposure and response prevention, ERP therapy. So it sounds like you know, you're nodding your head. You typically create this hierarchy and you add subjective values of distress, behaviors, things that make you uncomfortable, and you essentially kind of have to sit on your hands. You expose yourself to something that would cause you worry, apprehension, feelings of danger, of scaredness, but
Yeah.
you're not trying to engage in the behavior. And initially, you're delaying your response. If you can wait an extra minute, if you can wait 5 more minutes and then engage in the compulsion, you're essentially rewiring your brain to not believe every single thought. You are not your thinking. And goodness, it's been a journey. Some days are better than others, but it's a lifelong process for me.
You know what is fascinating for me, you describing this condition that you battling with is I just recently read this paper about flow and PTSD or trauma and how they are related in a sense. And the interesting thing is like how the brain is engaged in both scenarios, like flow consciousness, like feeling in total control. Certain parts of the brain shuts down. It's engaged in a challenging scenario, and then you have PTSD, which are traumatic events that might be similar, but where's the difference? Is the only difference is that in something that is traumatic is that you've experienced this helplessness, and in flow you experience the same situation but you feel in full control. However, and what was fascinating for me to see is in both cases you have like this post stress growth in that moment. Like for flow it's post stress not stress, post stress or stress. I think stress was it? Like
Eustress.
positive.
Yes.
Eustress. Thank you.
Eustress.
Eustress growth. Meaning in both cases, it sounds almost like in both cases you tend to become like your brain rewires itself. The only difference is that, as I mentioned, like experience helplessness and experience of being powerful. And now, like in the way you engaged your OCD was basically that you rewire yourself in having more control, whether it's just with a tiny little step. And this leads me to another question, and this is also how I come up like now with the whole part of The Aviator, so Howard Hughes. Like, this man was extremely intelligent. For me, it sounds almost like his ability of the brain to create these structures helped him probably to excel in these different industries. However, when there was no outlet, then this compulsion went into different things. So my question is almost like whether we have stress or something that is traumatic, or we experience a flow on the other hand. It's almost in both cases, it might make us extremely intelligent if we understand how to cope with it. Yeah.
Your example of Howard, I don't think I'm by any means close to him. It sounds like he was a savant, an absolute genius. If I could surrender, Rudi, my OCD and any good that came from it, I would in a heartbeat. I think the pain and the suffering that it has caused has been very unwelcome and a hindrance in my life. I think the underbelly of it, Rudi, and kind of what you're touching upon, and sometimes it's even tough to kind of put this into words because I don't want to enable OCD as this good thing. In my instance, right, I think the persistence, the resolve, the doggedness that it has allowed me to have is probably on another level. I am not naturally gifted. I don't think I'm naturally intelligent, but what I do have is I can sit in my chair and work forever. I think OCD it enables that. And I remember distinctly, like in high school and middle school, coming across a problem in my textbook, not knowing how to solve it, but also having this other voice saying, you will. There is nothing that you will not solve if you give yourself over to it. And it was this incredible tranquility and calm of, I am able and I will do it. So maybe OCD has allowed me to withstand kind of the test of time and maybe be a little bit more open to not knowing or the suffering. I can be in an uncomfortable place longer than most folks.
But hear me out. I mean, we have this notion or this imagination of some people are naturally gifted, which probably is the truth, because everybody is like born with certain inclinations. But at the end of the day, it's like how the brain evolves. And it's a feedback loop coupled with dopamine in all these different things. And if we, let's say, remove ourselves from like people are natural gifted and maybe see it from the lens of neuroplasticity, which actually happens, then it doesn't matter whether you are like considered somebody that is natural gifted or just somebody that has this voice in one that says, okay, like no matter how long it takes, I will do it. Because what happens in the brain, the rewiring of like first the belief and also maybe the different feedback loop that engages the different parts of the brain, will probably allow yourself at some point to solve problems just faster than anybody else, because you were like maybe compounding certain, let's say, patterns in your brain for maybe 5 years, and this compounds over time, and the faster you get in this, the more it compounds. So maybe like intelligence, what we call intelligence, is more a function of inclinations and the feedback loops and how we engage in these feedback loops, than rather something that is naturally gifted. I really like, but that's my observation based on the talks, everything that I have read regarding the brain. I believe like intelligence is probably something far more plastic than we ever imagined. And good thing about it is that we probably have so much agency in what we can create. And this will also validate why, for the first time in history, our IQ is going down. And that's also another discussion for mental health. I totally see that, but maybe that's something where we are not like fully, let's say, in the full consciousness of our world, that we fully appreciate how plastic and how much agency we have in what we perceive or label as intelligent.
I think you said that quite beautifully, Rudi, and I hope younger kids, children, younger people in general hear you.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember distinctly when I was a little boy, I don't think I quite believed that. I think now I'm on Team Rudi. I wholeheartedly believe, I think work ethic, smart work ethic, experience, pattern recognition, that all equates to intelligence. And I think that requires and demands kind of showing up at the end of the day. But when you're younger, I think often natural raw talent is encouraged. It's elevated.
Yes.
And the other kind of side of that isn't as fostered or groomed or supported nearly as much. And if there could be more emphasis on, that's okay. What other skill sets can you materialize, manifest?
Yeah.
How can we kind of surround you with community that really values who you are? I think we could all be, in your speak, intelligent.
I really like that, Pavel. I really like that a lot. And I'm so happy that we have this discussion, because I really feel like this is going to turn out very, very interesting for a lot of folks.
Amen. Amen, brother.
But coming back to FineMind, so how did this happen? So I guess it happened in Uganda, but tell your story. I'm curious about it. How did that happen, that you said, okay, I'm doing FineMind right now, and this is something that Uganda needs?
Boy, I wish it was as easy as 1, 2, and then you end up there. I had come back from a job. I was living in Canada, Toronto. I lived there, worked for Engineers Without Borders Canada. Loved it. Loved Toronto. It's one of the coolest places in the world, incredibly diverse. I had come back and was kind of, what's next? What am I going to be kind of committing my time and effort to? And I think I just simply started Googling global mental health, landscape of mental health. And I was rather shocked and appalled that so many places around the world had such high incidences, prevalence of mental health conditions, but so little was being done. And that drove me to kind of stumble upon this individual, this man. His name is Vikram Patel. Now, Vikram is kind of this founding father of global mental health, specifically with this kind of theory that he's coined called task sharing. Now, in the United States, more synonymous to that is what we think of peer counseling, peer specialist, someone who isn't necessarily trained or an expert, but they have the lived experience and maybe some support to really kind of guide and facilitate your journey. And task sharing is very similar. You equip a lesser qualified cadre, a non-professional, with some knowledge, some skills, and then that person acts kind of as an intermediary. They're they're typically known as community health workers. So he has done extensive work in this, and I was fascinated by him. So in that moment, Rudi, I emailed him. I emailed Vikram and was like, "Hi, Vikram. My name is Pavel. Really, really love your work. Love to talk with you." And to his benefit, Vikram responded to me in about 3 or 4 hours. We eventually spoke on the phone, and he runs in kind of congruence with an organization in India, a yearly course called Leadership in Mental Health. It happens in Goa, India. And I crowdfunded some money. I attended, and I remember Vikram spotting me and kind of smiling. He's like, "Pavel, you're here. You made it." And it was a room full of practitioners, of experts, of teachers, of entrepreneurs. And everyone, is raising their hand and saying, "I'm excited. I can't wait to make new connections. I can't wait to learn." But to me, I was like, this is a life's opportunity here. I was so thrilled to be there, but also to use the learning and the knowledge to see if we could create something. So what actually kind of served as the foundation of FineMind was that course. And we, in fact, took a model that was very successful in India and adapted it for the context of Uganda. So anyways, that was kind of the early beginnings of the work that is now.
Okay. This makes sense. That's interesting. But I can see how that might work. So for instance, a couple of times I spoke about the Man Circle in this podcast. I even invited 2 of my peers from the Man Circle here. And basically what we are doing there is like basically talking about like different topics that are just on our mind, whether it's purpose, relationship, or even fatherhood, whatever it is. And we are basically helping each other, like going to different thoughts, also changing the perspective and giving advice. However, what it creates is like, I feel like it has so much changed for me in the way I express myself with other people's and the way I can show up with other people's, and also like, let's say, get out of my maybe own compulsions, own patterns. And that's why I can see how like working with peers under certain conditions can help a lot.
It does. I think 2 things that I've noticed that really drive the impact that FineMind has in the community. When you kind of take away all the bells and whistles, all the technical jargon, all the treatments, I think what we do well is we listen. At least in Uganda, and in goodness in the United States, and I'd go on a limb and say in most places, often when we're engaging in conversation, we're contesting for attention. You say something, Rudi, and then I have to say something back. You say something, and I'm already thinking of the next thing. I think what we've kind of provided in Uganda is a space where the client can share their life story, and there is an unbridled attention on the other end. And oh my gosh, when someone listens fully, it's a pretty beautiful thing. The second piece is the fact that those folks who are providing the care are living in their neighborhoods, are living in their villages, right? Often when you see someone with the white lab jacket, it's a little bit distancing. But when you have someone that you live with, someone that's your peer, someone that you see at the market regularly, all of a sudden you feel an intimacy, a closeness, and then that individual is able to provide support and care. I think that just lands differently than someone who is above you.
I agree so much, and in particular what you're saying about listening. So I really have to tell you, like, one thing that I truly learned in the Man Circle is something that we call holding space. It's basically like you are just present with that person. You listen without the need of fixing, and just listen with empathy. And the thing is exactly what you mentioned, is like being like almost experienced or witnessed by somebody, but it's a deeper layer of listening. Maybe it sounds a bit weird at that moment, but it's a deeper way of listening, because it's almost like you observe their being in that moment or in that experience they had. you put yourself in their shoes and try to see their experience from their perspective without coming up with something. It's more like you just experience themselves from your perspective while trying to be in their perspective at the same time. And there's something that happens in that moment, and it's hard to describe. I can see it maybe sometimes when I'm talking to my son, when he noticed, and I can see in his expression, is that I'm just listening and I'm just trying to see his experience from his perspective without like changing it at all. It's just being with that person at that moment, and it creates a very deep, like, first of all, the other person feels understood. On the other hand, and that's also very strange, it does something with yourself as well, because at some point it also feels like that you are feel more present as well, because you are not caught up in your own stories.
Yeah.
Because you have to be almost like an empty vessel in that moment, and holding so much presence in that moment is, you can only do it when you are not in your patterns, and I think that's something that makes you free. Also, it's very healing when you do that.
It's I think it's much more difficult than what you say, right? To truly listen. I think we all do rather a poor job of it. But to your point, presence, listening, I think it begets belonging. I think there's an air of care, an air of thoughtfulness, an air of love. And at the end of the day, right, we just want to be heard. And maybe even more intimately, we want to be seen. And when you can hold my pain, my weight, my story.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything more beautiful or pristine than that.
Indeed, it is. 100% agree with you. And that's so interesting. Have you heard about the book Super Communicators from, what is his name? Charles Dewey?
I have heard of it. I haven't read it, Rudi. Maybe this is the nudge I need. Now I need to read it.
Yeah, because it's so interesting, because I got the nudge from somebody else, or two persons that were in this podcast. And interesting enough, they were like exploring interpersonal synchrony. So it's something that occurs when you are with another person, and for some reason there are certain people that are able to communicate in a way that your biomarkers starting to synchronize with my biomarkers, for instance. You can see it as well as, besides of the biomarkers, also that brain waves are synchronizing. And that's something that is a prerequisite for a high-performing team, interesting enough. And these super communicators, with their language, basically, they are able to do that. And funny enough, I didn't finish the book yet. However, it's so interesting that part of what is described in that book is basically something that I'm doing similar, or what I learned in the men's circle, basically. And it's so funny because, on the other hand, goes below communication, or beyond communication, because it allows yourself to synchronize with the other person, that you are basically allow to have like a similar language and also a similar understanding. And it's so fascinating that this is able to do by communication. And however, what they found out about these persons that are so-called super communicators is that, first of all, they ask a lot of questions, they listen very deeply, and they are also mirroring and matching the tones. Meaning, for instance, they create summaries of what they just heard. And for instance, when you are, let's say, aggravated, it's that they match your aggravation in the same tone that you have, and then maybe they changed it to a different tonality. And they also ask question about what this communication is about, what the emotions are about, and where we want to go, something in those lines. And it's so fascinating that this goes beyond just pure communication, because with communication you can, let's say, synchronize with another person, that you feel there's like this innate bond, that almost, in the way they describe it, it's like these stories that they're describing in this book are phenomenal. So you have to imagine these person, as an example, one person was a CIA agent. So he needed to recruit other people in governments and different governments as CIA agent in that regard. So you have to imagine the amount of like influence you have to have over another person, that they go into this danger of being like maybe killed for their activities. And just by relating to this other person, they are able to do that. But the funny or the interesting part, it's not manipulation, because it needs to come from a pure place and the other person can feel it. And that's so interesting.
I think, I've not known you for too long, Rudi, but I've listened to a couple of your episodes. And what really struck me, and I think this kind of aligns with what you're describing, is that you have a real earnestness, a humility, a curiosity. And I use this kind of a childlike interest to learn. And when I listen to some of your episodes, I think you emulate these skills just so beautifully. You have this sparkle when you're listening to someone and you're curious, and you're able to exhibit and show that in a manner that makes the other person feel completely seen. And as a bystander, as someone who was listening to the episode, I was on Team Rudi the entire time, because it was just so darn real and pure and authentic. Anyways, I just wanted to say that because that resonated from a couple of episodes of yours.
Thank you so much, Pavel. However, it's interesting that you telling me that, because I told something similar about you, because this is like the second time we speak, and I'm like, man, I like this guy. I'm just like Pavel, and there's no like really proper reasoning for that, and I'm like, he's a super communicator. He just got me over there.
I'll take it. If someone tells me that, I'll believe it more than if I tell myself that.
Yeah. But thank you as much for this compliment. I'm flattered, I have to tell you. However, I can tell you also, to be totally honest, while reading that, I was like, I kind of have that too. but I have to tell you as well, that's something I developed through the Man Circle. And something else, like the childlike curiosity, that's really something I always had. But I have to tell you as well that I was not always a good listener.
Well, maybe off the call, you'll tell me what made you become a good listener.
It was the pain. It was the pain.
Okay, that's through pain, there is beauty.
Yeah, it is. I mean, do you know Ray Dalio?
I do.
Yeah, and one of his, like, because he has this book, and this is one of my top 5 books, is Principles. And he has like basically great principles for business and personal life. And one of personal life was like pain plus reflection equals progress. And I feel like my whole life is pain and reflection. So I have a lot of progress.
Yes, it's well said. Touche, Rudi. Me too, brother. Me too.
Yeah. Maybe that's why we get so along, because we share the pain.
We share the pain. And hopefully sometimes some reflection too.
Yeah. It's just pain and reflection. So the pain is so big right now that we have to laugh it off.
We do.
No, but it's have you by the way, have you read Mastery from Robert Greene?
I have not, but again, I've been recommended that book a few times.
Ah.
Another nudge, Rudi. I appreciate it. My nightstand is going to be overwhelming now.
Yeah, I think by the end of this episode, you will have 10 books to read, and I will check in with you whether you got it.
I need an accountability buddy, and thankfully I have a Kindle, so it's going to be very small on my nightstand.
I mean, it's recorded, so you will have a lot of accountability partners. We just have to make sure that we have your contact established so everybody knows it. So please email Pavel and remind him to read the book that Rudi recommended to you.
Goodness, I'll let you know if somebody emails me.
So, by the way, but why I mentioned Mastery, by the way, like, I didn't finish Super Communicators yet. I have to tell you, like, Mastery, I read it maybe 3 times, and 1 time as an audio book, and I'm just now almost finishing, I think the fourth time. So, but what struck me the most is he talks about like everybody that created mastery. And I have to tell you, like Robert Greene, I have like, let's say, ambivalent opinion about him. For instance, there was this book like everybody talking about 48 Laws of Power. And I have to tell you, I think I went through it by an audiobook, but I didn't like it because the reason is it's a lot of like power plays and manipulations. And I have to tell you, maybe it's compromising my own positions, but I don't resonate with that a lot. Although I understand and I can see how part of the world is run like that. That's the truth. But I see it from the perspective I want to be part of the solution rather the problem. So, but one of the books which are like, for me, as I said, like one of the favorites is Mastery. And this book, what really highly resonate with me is, first of all, it's comprises of stories of people that actually created mastery in their life. And these are peoples like Michelangelo, Albert Einstein, but also like modern peoples like Sergey Brin and all these different people in completely different industries. And interesting enough, two things that stand out was one thing that is particular when it comes to like the connection with their inner child. So everybody had this like childlike curiosity that never ended. And then the other thing, and this is also something that I'm now heavily like interested in, but I always felt like I have it, was this intuition. And that these masters were able to access their intuition and had a deeper understanding of a particular field. And one example that he gave was also somebody like Rommel. He was like this general of the Nazis. However, it's still interesting the way he described him, that he was like able to like sense where the battle is going and stuff like that. And for me, it's really intriguing to just let aside like the ethics of it, what these masters are able to do. It's just because they have this like innate curiosity that they coupled with a field of mastery, and then it enabled them to like embody their subject matter in a greater sense. And yeah, that's something that I wanted to share.
I have to read the book now, Rudi. I'll say
Of
one
course.
quick comment, and then we can certainly move on. I think there's an endless, vast array of incredible insight, intel, knowledge in the world. So I think folks who often say they're bored, I have a hard time with that, because if there's so much that you simply can't wrap your hands around, the curiosity, I think it's the fuel, it's the gas. And then the other component, whenever I'm speaking with people, they're endlessly interesting as well. So my curiosity peaks even more, because how are they thinking about something? What about the reframe there? What about their personal experiences that is novel or new for me? So me and you, curious brothers.
Yeah. But funny enough, is it maybe, and that's why I still poking on your condition, is it not maybe the possible or the opposite spectrum of your like weaknesses and the strengths, that you have this like endless possibilities of like exploring novel things?
I think so, right? I think so. As you were talking, I actually had this kind of interesting realization. Intuition, when you talked about intuition, it's a really kind of slippery concept for me. I believe in intuition, but I think what makes it difficult, makes it fallible with OCD, is that sometimes our feelings, our thoughts or emotions aren't,
Yes.
they mislead you. And if you chase every feeling and act on certain feelings, that's not a recipe for durability or success.
Yeah, I get it.
So often what I lean upon, it's another type of therapy. It's called acceptance and commitment therapy. And what they say is that lean on your values. What are your values? And if you feel scared, but you value commitment or you value forgiveness, act in the face of the feeling, because the value is the overarching piece that governs. That's your North Star. That feels more resonant to me. And maybe intuition is our values.
That's interesting. And I get it. I totally get it. And I feel like intuition is really a tricky thing because I feel like, for instance, I can give you an example. Sometimes, as you mentioned, is like, how can you distinguish between you have like an intuition flash or thought or whatever it is, and when there's something where, let's say, and talking from my own experiences, where your brain creates drama, like creating a narrative which is not there, but you piece the things together to validate maybe certain emotions that are not true. And funny enough is like the older I get, the more I can distinguish between like having truly an intuition or having intuition or experiencing intuition or having like these, let's say, hijack narratives. I just call them like that,
Yeah.
where it's a kind of trauma created. And now what I figured is that basically my central nervous system oscillating, because
Yeah.
I myself experienced a lot of like, let's say, unsafety or oscillation in my environments. So I feel like I still like oscillating in these like scenarios. So my central nervous system is still wired for like high arousal. And whenever like something is not like high arousal and everything is calm, I get suspicious, and probably then my brain creates drama, and I can construct anything because I can
Yeah.
see patterns in anything. And then the further you go, and then you believe your own stories and feel like, yeah, that's the fully the truth. And as you like mentioned before, like for instance in your example, when you mentioned like how you were attracted to somebody else, which is like totally normal because we're all humans.
It's
And then you feel like, oh, you're a naughty bad person for
right.
just having entertained the thought.
Correct.
And you're so right on that, and you have to feel bad about it. But you, yeah, I get it. I get it.
I think at the end of the day, it's kind of base emotions. If I am hungry, I need to eat. If I am tired, maybe take a nap. If I am sad, address that. If any of that is at play, I think I love how you talked about these hijacked thoughts. They're more intense, they're more regular, they're more frequent. So, really just trying to tend to myself, and often not always a seal proof solution. It may diminish and reduce some of those thoughts.
But I feel it. I think it's great how you said it, that you have also this strategy of like acceptance. And you say, okay, at this moment, this is where I am. It's like I don't feel well. I have maybe this narrative that is going on, but it's fine.
That's hard, Rudy. That's something I'm still learning. And with my therapist, the moment you start to engage with the thought, you've
Mm-hmm.
already bought into it. You've already
Yeah,
believed to a certain
yeah,
extent that thought exists, so you're trying to problem solve. But to your
yeah.
point, if you kind of accept it, maybe
Mm,
not. Maybe I am deceitful. Maybe I
yeah,
am a terrible person.
yeah,
Maybe not. I don't
yeah.
know, but in this moment, I'm going to continue living my life as is. At that point, you kind of surrender, release the power of that thing over you. And
Mm.
it doesn't come naturally. It's very difficult to do.
But you know what is interesting, and that's maybe giving you also a different perspective on your condition is, through your condition, you needed to create something, maybe you heard of it, which is metacognition. So like understanding your own thoughts, and also like trying to understand, are they valid or are they just something that is created in that moment? And metacognition is something that is highly correlated with, and that's full circle. It's with people that succeed no matter what and have better decision making abilities. So it's interesting in that sense that you, out of necessity, had to develop something that is correlated with having better mental health.
Fantastic. What if that was great? That was like a movie, Rudy. We took an adventurous hero's journey, and you brought us right back. That was not planned, but that was eloquent and stunning.
Thank you
Well
so much.
done.
And I think now we can continue talking about FineMind, because that's originally our plan before we got sidetracked with very interesting other discussions.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm an open book. Whatever you want to know about FineMind, the foibles, the lessons, the learnings, anything, I'm happy to share.
Okay, you're an open book. We got that on record right now. So I ride that horse till it is dead. Well, but tell me, I mean, one thing that astounded me, and this was already astounding for myself when we had our first discussion, was the metric you just mentioned at the beginning. Like in Uganda, you have 5 psychiatrists for 5, no, was it 50 million? 5 million for, yeah, 50 million persons. So this is astounding. And interesting enough, and I told you that, so my half of my like ancestors are from Africa, so I have also a perspective on that, but we can discuss that later. But I was astounded by that, although I had like relations to Africa. I can tell you also from the experience of my mother is that mental health is not a priority in Africa. Not at all. However, this is also supported by data is I have seen, do you know the Sapiens Lab?
I've heard a little bit about it, but please inform me, educate me.
So I just got the gist because I don't have the details in my mind right now, but they have this metric about the state of world mental health. It's basically an index of certain indications like mood regulations, all these different things that we are considering as mental health. And interesting enough is right now where their metrics are showing that sub-Saharan Africa have better mental health in comparison to the West, which I totally see. I think it's due to our smartphones or the usage of smartphones in combination with social media. I think when you look what is going on with this what is going on with Meta, for instance, they are now like in front of in this trial where their own research are showing basically that these applications are eroding mental health, and this is probably the amplifications of everything that is going on. And that's the reason why I believe that we have this gap that sub-Saharan Africa is better off. However, and this is my observation with my mother, is I saw her living in Europe having more problems with mental health because of the lack of community. And in Africa, and that's my observation, people tend to be not more social, but there's more community.
Absolutely.
Like people are more in communities, more social gatherings. And then I believe for her, that was something that caused mental health issues. So my question here is, so what are the topics, for instance, in Uganda that requires extensive mental health, although certain data suggest that these countries are better off than the West?
I'm very curious now to dig a little bit deeper into the Sapiens Lab and to see what metrics they're using to kind of correlate maybe improved or better mental health. I love your point about community. Years ago, I was talking with a friend and we talked about wealth. And I think monetarily, the United States, I'm maybe wealthier than a
Yeah.
Ugandan. You're maybe wealthier monetarily. But when you expand the vision about wealth, I don't live in community. I don't live close to the earth. I don't harvest my own food. I'm not in nature all the time. I am isolated. And in that context, our Ugandan peers are vastly more wealthy than I am. So in that context, maybe there's a little bit of a through line there. I'm curious if the Sapiens Lab is speaking to. With FineMind, we focus exclusively on depression. Because there are so few specialists, psychologists and psychiatrists, depression is commonly known as a common mental disorder, and research has shown conclusively that you can use what they call lay people, folks that don't have kind of quote-unquote expertise or specialized knowledge to provide care for it. So we remain in that sandbox. And if someone has maybe schizophrenia or psychosis, it's up to us now to articulate those referral pathways. I think it's our responsibility so they can kind of receive that proper care. Uganda is a country that has an actually high suicide rate as well. It's one of the highest in Africa, one of the highest in the world. And I think often what we forget is that mental health standalone is its own issue, but it's also tied directly to poverty. If you're not able to make an income, if you can't feed your family, if you can't fend for yourself, inadvertently, that's going to pressure and cause weight and duress on your mental health, and vice versa. And it's this really catastrophic kind of cycle that endures. So we focus on mental health, and we've actually been shown we can show the economic improvements of our work, but we also want to partner with organizations on the ground that focus on economic empowerment, livelihood support. Because these issues that we talk about, mental health, it's not an isolated issue, right? It's a complex social problem. And I think it's silly for any of us to tease out, we're only going to magnify mental health, when in God reality, it's all interconnected, and it requires a fleet of actors to really attend to many parts of this kind of cog, this wheel. Because if you don't have spokes, that wheel is going to collapse. So we all need to have a responsibility and a stake.
That's so great how you explain that. And it makes totally sense now from even maybe, let's say, the big numbers doesn't support it. However, like understanding like depression and also other things that led maybe to suicide, no matter whether this is like a smaller issue in Africa, it still is underutilized in the way that there are like solutions. So I totally get it. And it's interesting. It's like a reverse dynamic, although it seems like the problem is smaller in total numbers, but in actual, when you magnify it, it's bigger, because the correlations of like people that have the solution in comparison to people having the problem is bigger. The ratio is bigger in that sense. So it's interesting to see that.
That was my dog. Now everyone will meet my dog as well.
Okay, I think he probably has some special needs.
Hey, maybe he wants to contribute to the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, we have to listen to him as well. You never know. I mean, we don't want that he has his own sort of depression because you ignore him.
God, neglectedness, yeah, not good.
But very interesting. Can you walk me through how you are delivering this? Is technology part of it? I mean, of course, I'm biased. I have a technology background, and I love technology, the positive side of it. But for me, it's always like who wield the tool is also the expression of how good it is or how bad it is. I can see at this point of time, I think we are in this period where we expose, or we are getting clear about the facts that big tech has on us. And it's interesting because it's also a mixed bag. On the one hand, we have this amazing communication tools, just like, for instance, when I mentioned Meta, because it creates livelihoods, it creates the possibility to stay connected, but it's also like, and this is the dark secret, not secret anymore, that it causes a lot of harm. So I'm curious about whether you are engaging also in technology in FineMind, or you have plans about that. I'm curious about that, because what I think that we are needing at this point of time, that we have more human-aligned technology that help us, because I can see like there's so much potential for utilizing that technology.
We are, Rudi, and I'm also a proponent of respectable, safe technology use. And I think technology is going to be a force multiplier in really providing care to the masses. Let me see if I can kind of synthesize a little bit of how we provide the care and how we do the work. We offer with FineMind what we call a stepped care intervention. Now, trying to kind of dissect what that means. I'm a firm believer, Rudi, that health isn't a one-size-fits-all. Mental health shouldn't be either. Depending on the symptom severity of our clients, we triage you to the type of treatment that we think is going to help you best. Yeah. And often, imagine if you have a psychiatrist right now, typically what happens in Uganda is everyone overwhelms the psychiatrist and psychologist, but some of the issues don't require that type of specialized care. There could be a lesser type of treatment that is equally as effective, and you don't need to overwhelm or bottleneck the system. So what we offer is something we call interpersonal counseling and then also problem management plus is the second step. And then the last is a referral system. All of our counselors right now, we equip them with tablets. And on these tablets, we've actually partnered with a remarkable company called Dimagi. Now, Dimagi, their flagship product is something called ComCare. Now, ComCare is used in over 130 countries across the world. And they have this remarkable software where we have now uploaded our assessments, our entire flow of treatment, skip logic, everything is there. So as you're interfacing with the client, it essentially guides you. It keeps you on track and asks you the requisite questions that you're supposed to ask. And at the end of it, you submit. It's submitted to a secure server, and every session we're tracking how someone is faring. What are the qualitative indicators, the quantitative indicators? We're sitting on so much incredible replete data. And now we're actually taking all this data and showcasing it into these interactive dashboards. What I'm really excited about, I'm also equally kind of cautious and nervous, is also with AI. Right, AI, it's moving so rapidly right now. And we're actually working on a project to take all of our manuals, all of our standard operating procedures, and train the AI on a singular scope, and actually use the AI to be kind of an extension of our monitoring and evaluation team. It'll essentially be coaches for our counselors, because right now, our counselors may forget on session 3 of interpersonal counseling, I know I'm supposed to ask this, but I don't remember. And they call Sam. And now Sam has to pick up the call, answer that question. Could they immediately get a remarkable answer from the palm of their hand? So we are piloting, creating this, what we're calling on-call, this chatbot that's going to support and act as an extension of our team. Beyond that, I'm really curious to see the other kind of innovations of AI. Specifically, could AI provide more supervision? Create an avatar where you're interfacing now and being trained. And then that avatar provides you real-time feedback as to how you provided the counseling session. There's so many different iterations I'm thrilled about, but I'm also really cautious and wary because you read so many stories, Rudi, of where mental health startups, the impacts are severe and quite abrupt. And if the proper parameters, constraints aren't applied, it can be really disastrous and scary.
Oh my God. This reminds me of a conversation I just had recently. This is with Skip Rizzo. I had already a podcast with him, but I recorded just recently another one. And one of the main discussion we had about was AI. And the funny thing, and he told me about a product or a solution that they're currently working on. And I feel like I have to connect you, both of you, because you are doing similar things. So one thing is that they have just launched a product for veterans where they can interact with this conversational chatbot that leads to, based on what you are describing, to the different like solutions or things that you are basically offered very quickly. And funny enough, the results were astounding. So they just did a test, I think, with thousands of people. A lot of people said like, hey, this is remarkable. I was able to get more like knowledge about extensive health of my condition within a short amount of time in comparison to what I did by my own research the last 10 years. So like remarkable outcomes. And however, they are now building even a better system where based on your voice, the system recognize already in what kind of situation or mental state you are, so it can track your distress in that sense. And the craziest thing about it was that he has now this amazing technology, and on the one hand he's like elated about it and thinks like there's so much potential. And I'm also on the spot was thinking like that's amazing for, let's say, pilots, for instance. But on the other hand, he's battling with the implication of privacy, and also the implications of whether somebody use that technology and use it for nefarious things. And just imagine, I mean, I don't want to blame everything on Meta or Google or whatever, but just imagine you have this technology. Basically, you can build it in your iPhone, and based on your voice, it can give you like advertisement. Like they feel that you are in distress in a certain topic of your life and just offer this solution. And there are like theories about this is already happening. Nevertheless, the thing is, what we can see right now is that it has both potentials. It reminds me of Schrödinger's cat, where we have like these, we are in superpositions of a great outcome, and then the other one, which is basically what we have all seen in 1989, or what was this book about? 1984. And most of the time I'm very positive because everything gets exposed right now, and we can clearly see like the systems are not working anymore. And on the other hand, it's like we have this amazing technology, but we are just, from the maturity levels, we are not just there, or most people are not there. And that's why I'm so inspired and delighted about having these discussions also with you, because I feel like you are this person that building something that have a net positive income and outcome for us as a humanity. And I understand that we all need to earn money in this world. And I'm not the person that is going to live in the jungle, which I'm honest here, but I believe like you can have both. We can have like a thriving society and earn good money without compromising everybody. But it's like, I don't get it why somebody needs to do it. I understand certain, like, let's say, incentives that are probably pressuring people to get derailed. But I feel like we all have it in our hands to do something else.
But Rudi, I thought about this, and I think this is a nice segue to think about this as well with you a little bit. And this isn't a nefarious action, right? AI is already replacing certain tasks and responsibilities that maybe folks who have done for years. And I actually worry about my mom. We immigrated to the United States when I was 5 years old. We didn't know any English. And my mom and my dad at that point, only now as I'm a father, I can kind of look back and really truly appreciate the sacrifice. Coming into a new place, not really knowing anything, and trying to kind of support, feed your kids, create a loving household. My mom has been she's an insurance biller for a hospital. And to me, my worry is that at the pace that AI is accelerating, what if my mom's job is replaced? What will happen to my mom's livelihood? And that really kind of unnerves me. And I don't think, again, it's not a nefarious thing. One of my favorite quotes is by Wayne Gretzky, and he says, "You skate to where the puck is going."
Can you explain that?
So the idea is that AI is already going there. And if we want to maximize its full potential, you're not where the puck is now, you're going to where the puck is going. You try and anticipate its kind of end goal. And I think it's incumbent upon us to skate to where the puck is going. And the puck is going where some of these jobs are going to be inherently eliminated or radically shift and change. So I just worry for my mom. As a son of of an immigrant. We came here and she's kind of got her life up and going. How is that going to impact her? Anyways, just wanted to share that.
I really appreciate that you share that, and I understand that. There's a different perspective I want to share with you.
Please.
And this is also like, I had this, like, let's say, intuitive feeling about that even earlier, is where I believe, like, I don't think we are coming soon at this place where it totally replaces jobs. And there are certain jobs where I can clearly see that. For instance, like a semi-truck driver. That's potentially something I can see maybe in the next 2, 3, 4 years, something around those lines. However, for instance, the perspective I want to share with you, have you heard about the study of the remote work index?
No.
So basically what they did, they took like the most prominent MMM, the most prominent AIs, and took different kind of jobs, and they wanted to see how good AI is doing these different jobs. The craziest thing, even the best models for instance, like the latest of Claude, had just an index of, I think, it was below 10%, and the maximum was 100% of, obviously. However, there are certain particular things, for instance, like creating articles, creating writings, and also graphics, where AI could completely complete the job at hand. However, it was always needed a different layer or somebody that, let's say, put AI in line or correct something, or you could clearly see end-to-end automation was not an easy task to do still. I still see like, and I get that we have by probably this exponential rise. However, something that also makes me a bit like optimistic, that certain things that we are as human clearly excel, as for instance that we have this huge transfer of knowledge and we don't need a lot of like input data in order to do something, right? And so in particular, are you familiar with Bloom's taxonomy?
I am.
Yeah. So the great, like the bottom layer or the top layers, I think we can excel still in the next maybe 5 years or something. And the thing here is, what I can clearly see is like AI is particularly good when it comes to big data. Having big data, synthesizing, seeing patterns in that data based on, let's say, the training data, and also like prompting it clearly what we want from the data. I think AI is very particularly good in this, and it excels. However, I'm not sure whether these models that we are using, this iteration of AI, is possible to get to the next one, because you can clearly see that, for instance, AI is not clearly understanding patterns or logical patterns inherently. It's just a prediction of the next word. And so it's not a like deep layer of understanding. It's more superficial layer on understanding, of course. Bring aside like the, let's say, talking about data mining or stuff like that, the amounts of huge data. So I believe that we probably see in the next 5 years the synergy of like humans working together with AI and like super intelligence. I don't buy it right now, because I believe at this point of time we probably have a scalability issue, because one thing that I also could see is that they always had these leaps because they increased the amount of data, and this led also to more energy, bigger data centers, and so forth. But now it seems like we have this diminishing returns. So probably there's another iteration of AI that needs to come through, and maybe it creates even a bubble. And I'm not negative about that, because we have seen this hype cycle always. And then we come to a, let's say, maybe more mature way of seeing AI, and also incorporating AI and seeing that it kind of replaces certain jobs, but maybe it enhances certain things. And if we as humans still like focusing on having our sovereignty and focusing on the top half of Bloom's taxonomy, then we are still good. That's my belief.
Rudi, if I ever feel nervous or apprehensive, I'm going to reach out to you to assuage my concerns. Beyond the many takeaways, that's what I'm feeling of like, all right, Rudi's bullish about this. He's still hopeful that it's not going to replace. If I'm down, you're the person I call.
Thank you so much. You make my life way better, because I know Pavel needs my insight to feel better. So at least somebody is appreciating the things that I'm saying.
You got it.
But coming back to FineMind, I mean, what I like about the way you are incorporating this is it sounds like you are creating a new standard in how working with mental health in general. And my question is there, let's say, from the model you have created, something that is transferable, for instance, to another country, or even to the West, or to Canada, or America?
Absolutely. What we are particularly excited about, kind of hell-bent, this is what we're going to kind of really push, is how do we see mental health become a routine part of primary care? So what that means to us is that the government at some point sees this as part and parcel of every single health facility, of the infrastructure kind of writ large. In Uganda, we have about 7,000 health facilities, Rudi, and many of them don't have any semblance of mental health. But wouldn't it be incredible if you were to visit a health facility and you had some physical sickness? Wouldn't it be amazing if that person, that assistant that greeted you at the door and that tended to your physical ailment could also provide effective care for your mental health needs? Because I'm a believer, steadfast believer, that both of them are inseparable. So to me, I think the application is, if I'm going to see a primary care physician, I'd love to also be tended to with my mental health. This idea of health, when we talk about health, I think we often think about physical health.
Yeah.
I want to broaden the definition. It's not just physical health, it's mental health. And in fact, they're kind of one and the same.
Yeah.
And if we can really buy into that, I mean, goodness, the amount of care, the amount of progress, the support that can be offered is pretty monumental and transformative. That's my wish. Primary care facilities also being able to provide mental health in Uganda, in Canada, in Lesotho, in Switzerland. I mean, God, you name it. Let's light the world ablaze.
Yeah, I totally see that. And it goes also to something that I just recently learned, is about how the mind and the body are interconnected. And I feel like coming more to a holistic way of seeing health is totally spot on, and I can clearly see that. And just imagine, I mean, I walk myself through, let's say I have a diagnosis which might be life altering. Of course I need to speak to somebody. And funny enough, there's like a lot of like scientific discovery that supports that the way you interacting with your condition has an impact of how fast, for instance, like your flesh is healing and stuff like that. And I remember even a good friend of mine told me about this story about that there are these people that have this life-ending diagnosis of cancer. And there are a small percentage of these people that never actually die of cancer, although they have like this life-ending diagnosis. And the way he describes it, I just describe it from my memory, so it's not 100% accurate in the details. But what he described was that there are certain people that have this innate acceptance. So they have no inner resistance in that regard. And like the way he described it was like they accept, okay, I have this illness, I'm probably going to die, which is fine. I don't fight it in that sense. Like it's there. I don't blame society, my life or whatever for this. It's like, it's there and it's okay. And what happened is that for some reason there, and this goes down on a on their cellular level, that they, their cells are producing some more energy for some reason. And this like extensive energy that was created helps the body to maintain status quo or even remove the cancer totally. I have to really, because it's so interesting, I have to get this the scientific paper around this, because it kind of sounds like esoteric, I get it, but the way he described it, and this is why, because I tell it from my memory, it was very scientifically measured that the cells, the energy centers of the cells, what is it? The mitochondria, created more energy in certain areas, like through this process of accepting one's condition and accepting basically that their life is going to end, that mitochondria in their cells created more energy to fight this disease and leveled up their immune system in that sense. And this goes down exactly to what you mentioned right now, that mental health is an integral part of medicine as well. And one thing that I always challenge, and my sister is a physician, and one thing that really opened my mind, although like you have this like how pharma is creating medicine, is like they always have this double-blind studies. And this alone shows you the power your mind has. And I think if we can integrate that exactly like you mentioned, I think we probably have so much more to learn and so much more to integrate in. And experiencing something that we see like a disease or a condition, something that is also part created through our minds and how the body is connected with the mind, that leads us also to see like maybe it's not only drugs and it's not only surgery, it's also like mental health in that sense that cures the body, that cures the disease, that cures whatever it is.
I love it. I love it, Rudi. I'm glad that you're a proponent and an advocate for this, because sometimes I find folks that maybe don't quite believe it. I think many of us operate on this pretense that we are our thoughts, and we think in OCD terms it's called cognitive fusion. You don't even believe your thoughts; you are your thoughts, and then those thoughts dictate how you act, how you show up. And if you can get a little bit of distance, just a slight little wedge between that thinking, I think really incredible things are possible, and you feel, to your point, more free, acceptance, celebration. I mean, a lot of really remarkable things can happen.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Well, I think we hit a point where I think for the moment we had where we discussed a lot of like great things. I want to wrap it up slowly with your vision of FineMind in the next 5 to 10 years.
I kind of touched on it, Rudi, a little bit, right? In Uganda, like I said, there are 7,000 health facilities. Our dream is to see mental health be in every single health facility. Now, I'm not selfish enough to think that our model is the panacea, that we have all the answers. I'd love some semblance of mental health, that if anyone was to visit a facility, that they could be also treated for their physical ailment to the same extent that they're treated for their mental health ailment. Right now, Rudi, we're funded philanthropically. We have external funders, foundations, and donors. I think the hope is, how do you unlock government to support, to really buy in and allocate budgetary financing where it becomes policy legislation. That's what we're pushing for. And that's the legacy I want to see, that, again, these people, anywhere you visit, you're able to avail yourself to effective, proper, heart-centered mental health services for you.
Wow. That was very spot on. And thank you so much for sharing all of that with me. Is there something else you want to like just share, and that you feel like this is something that you were not able to share in our conversation so far?
Honestly, no, Rudi. This has been a true delight. I think often when we do these exchanges, it's very singular track. And I love that you and I were just able to riff off of what came to mind and have a genuine conversation. And I hope folks just really resonate with the humanness of it. To your point, we've only met twice, and I feel like you're a friend. So that's a takeaway I'm leaving with.
Same. Thank you so much for taking your time. This was a great conversation. Really, I loved it. And I really love to stay in touch with you, because as you said, like, it really feels like we have been friends forever. And looking forward to keep in touch.
Thank you, Rudi. Thank you for everything. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.